The diplomatic hall of Station Kepler-7 had seen countless delegations from across the galaxy, but nothing quite prepared Ambassador Vorath for the scene unfolding before his compound eyes. River stood at the entrance, his datapad forgotten in his hand as he watched approximately 40 young beings, cubs, kits, hatchlings, and pups from a dozen different species, surge into the grand chamber like a tide of chaos. Their collective noise was deafening, chirps, squeaks, roars, and hollers echoing off the vaulted ceiling. The Xanthari ambassador's antennae flattened against his skull in distress. "This is unprecedented," Vorath chittered, his translator barely keeping pace. "The council chamber is no place for their children, Ambassador," River interrupted gently, though his own expression betrayed concern. "They're scared. Their transport was attacked. Where else would they go?" The young refugees had arrived 3 hours ago, survivors of a pirate raid on a colony transport. Mixed species, mixed ages, all traumatized and frightened. The station's childcare facilities were overwhelmed, and someone had made the catastrophic decision to shepherd them here, to the main diplomatic wing, where emergency supplies were being distributed. Now the hall descended into pandemonium. A young Crothian, all scales and sharp teeth, lunged at a Tellurian kid over a ration pack. 2 Vaxian pups wrestled near a priceless cultural artifact. A human toddler wailed at pitch that made even River wince. "This cannot stand." Vorath's voice rose above the din. "Security must—" "Ambassador." The voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. Yet somehow it cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Amerson had entered through the far door. River watched as every eye in the chamber, human and alien alike, turned toward her. She was not imposing in stature. The human woman stood average height, her frame slight compared to many species present. She wore simple civilian clothes, not even a uniform. Yet something about her presence commanded attention. She moved through the crowd of younglings with unhurried steps, her gaze sweeping across the scene with calm assessment. A Vaxian pup barreled toward her, all energy and no direction. Amerson simply extended one hand, palm out, and the pup skidded to a halt, then sat. River had served with Amerson for 3 years on the frontier stations. He'd seen her negotiate with warlords, face down smugglers, and once memorably stare down a rogue AI until it agreed to reboot. But this was different. She knelt in the center of the hall, bringing herself to eye level with the smallest children. Her voice remained soft, that same quiet murmur. "I know you're hungry. I know you're scared. I know you want to go home." The Crothian youngling, still clutching the disputed ration pack, approached warily. His species were apex predators raised to show dominance, yet he moved toward Amerson like a moth to flame. "You've all been very brave," she continued, her eyes meeting each child's gaze in turn. "Braver than you should have had to be, but right now I need you to be brave a little longer." She placed her hand on the floor, and to River's amazement, the nearest children began to mirror her, settling into sitting positions. The Tellurian kid who'd been fighting over food crept closer. The crying human toddler's wails softened to sniffles. "There is enough for everyone," Amerson said, her voice never rising above that gentle murmur. "But we must wait our turn."
"Can you do that for me?"
The Crothian youngling, Raxith, River remembered from the manifest, tilted his scaled head. "You are Alpha?" The translator rendered his confusion clearly. In his culture, dominance was established through force and volume. Amerson's lips curved in a gentle smile. "I am someone who will make sure you are safe. All of you. But first you must listen." She stood slowly, and 40 pairs of eyes tracked her movement. "Those with red tags come to my left. Blue tags to my right. Green tags form a line behind Officer River." River jerked slightly at the mention of his name, but moved into position. He'd worked crowd control during colonial emergencies, managed evacuation protocols, but he'd never seen anything like this. The children obeyed. Not quickly. Not perfectly, there were still squabbles and confusion, but they obeyed. The Vaxian pup stopped wrestling. The Xanthari larva ceased its distressed humming. Even the human children, who River knew could be particularly challenging, fell into line. Ambassador Vorath's antennae slowly rose from their flattened position. "How," he began, his translator catching on the word. "How is this possible? The human does not use pheromones. She does not use volume or threat displays. She possesses no natural weaponry or intimidation features." River found himself smiling despite the situation. "No, Ambassador. She doesn't need any of that. Over the next 20 minutes, Amerson orchestrated the distribution of supplies with quiet efficiency. She moved among the children, a word here, a gentle touch there. When two younglings started to argue, she was there before voices could escalate. When a Tellurian kit began to panic, separated from its clutchmates, her presence soothed before terror could take hold. "Your turn," she would murmur, and they would wait. "Just a moment longer," she would say, and they would remain calm. River helped where he could, following her lead, marveling at the transformation. The hall that had been a disaster zone now hummed with orderly if tired activity. Children ate their rations. Medical staff moved through to treat minor injuries. Foster families began arriving to provide temporary homes. "I do not understand," Vorath admitted, approaching River as they watched Amerson comfort a group of the youngest children. "We Xanthari use pheromonal hierarchy. The Crothians use dominance displays. The Vaxians use pack bonding through scent. What does the human use?" River thought about it, watching Amerson kneel beside a frightened Tellurian kit. Her voice too low to hear, but her meaning clear in every gesture. "On Earth," he said slowly, "humans were never the strongest species. Never the fastest or the most well-armed by nature, but they became the most successful. Through technology," Vorath suggested. "Through cooperation," River corrected. "Through the ability to organize, to lead, to make others want to follow. Amerson isn't controlling them through fear or biology. She's earning their trust." A young human boy, no more than 6 standard years, approached Amerson with tears still wet on his cheeks. She opened her arms and he fell into them. Over his head, her eyes met River's, and in them he saw exhaustion, determination, and something else, a fierce protectiveness that transcended species. "Wait your turn," she had murmured. And they had obeyed their queen, not because they feared her, River realized, but because somehow in the midst of chaos and trauma, she had made each of them believe that they mattered, that they would be cared for, that they were safe. Ambassador Vorath's antennae quivered in what River had learned to recognize as respect. "Perhaps," the Xanthari said quietly, "this is why humans are so formidable. Not their weapons or their ships, but this." River nodded, still watching Amerson as she organized the last of the children into their temporary placements. "Yeah," he agreed. "This is exactly why we're formidable." In the Grand Diplomatic Hall of Station Kepler 7, a human woman with no weapons, no rank, and no authority beyond what she naturally commanded, had turned chaos into order with nothing but a gentle voice and an iron will, and 40 younglings from across the galaxy would remember the day they met their queen.